You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 28. Today I'll be talking to Jon Ching. Alright, so my name's Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. If this is your first time listening, Art Affairs is meant to give you a look at and into the new contemporary art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, shining a spotlight on the human side of the wonderful work they do. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes at artaffairs.podcast.com, and you can check out new episodes on all your favorite podcast platforms. Of course, if you like what I'm doing here, be sure to subscribe. And you can always connect with the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Jon Ching. Jon's work caught my eye towards the beginning of the year in what we call the before times, when he was part of a 3-person show at Corey Helford Gallery. As with a lot of artists that I follow, Jon has a heavy focus on wildlife and the natural world, but he puts a very interesting surrealist twist to it. We talk about his hybrid fauna creatures on the show, as well as the path he took through mechanical engineering to get where he is today, his upcoming solo show at Haven Gallery, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jon Ching. Jon, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited. I like the podcast, so happy to be on it now.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I'm really grateful for people that are checking it out. So let's talk about your background for a little bit. And from what I understand, you were born and raised in Hawaii, and you'll have to help me with the pronunciation. I think it's Kaneohe?
Yeah,
is that right?
That's great.
Okay. So, which is on the island of Oahu. What was the area like where you grew up?
It was super lush, kind of mountainy. Yeah, like it rained all the time. Just like very green, nice island life.
Did you spend much time in nature as a kid? I mean, is this something that you kind of had around you all the time?
I think I didn't spend much time in it. I was around it a lot. But yeah, it's kind of like, I wish that I was out there more. I mean, I definitely have like memories of playing in the backyard, or like, it wasn't really a yard. It was just like the back of like my, house. And it was like very like jungly, and there was like a little stream that went by. So I'd like go there once in a while. But now with my like love of nature, I wish I just like lived there instead of like watching so much TV.
What kind of work did your parents do?
My mom worked at my elementary school. She just retired last year, and she's kind of done a few positions there. Most recently, she was kind of like a teacher's aide, or more like the student's aide for special needs kids. So kind of like their extra hand, their like, attention maker. And then my dad worked in escrow, I think, most of his life, like with the banks and private companies.
So having your mom at school, did that cause any trouble with you?
Maybe more for my brother. I was the good kid. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that was always a threat, from the teachers, like, they could just march me down. But no, it was cool. I feel like I like got like a little kind of like preferential treatment, I guess, because, they're friends with my mom. So
Sure. Did you have much exposure to art as a kid? Like, was it something that you had around you at all? Did you have people in your life that were artists?
No, I didn't really know any artists. I think just it was around the normal ways, like with public murals and stuff. But yeah, there was no really like intentional exposure to it besides like what I got at school or what was just, around.
So how did you take an interest in creating art yourself? Like how did you get that bug, I guess?
I mean, I've just been drawing like forever. I think like, kids are always given the opportunity to draw, and like I think it was my brother, he kind of like got into it, drawing like Ninja Turtles and stuff. And so like I would just follow, or like, my parents would get me like a sketch pad, and yeah, I don't know, it was just like the thing to do besides playing like Game Boy or like yeah, TV. It was just yeah, I got into like drawing Dragon Ball Z and then like Mortal Kombat characters, and yeah, it's always just kind of been a thing I did.
What was it, something that you were doing just as, just for fun, as a hobby, or did you think, hey, someday I could actually be doing this as a career, like something professionally?
No, yeah, I didn't really think professionally for a while. And then when I did, it was like in a different direction, but it was just for fun. It was just, I think maybe just, I always liked getting better at it. So, it's like I would draw something and then figure something out, and the next time I would do it, and I'm still doing that. That's kind of crazy, but yeah, it was just to pass the time, I think.
Okay. And so ultimately when you went to school, when you went to college, you focused on something completely different. Your focus was mechanical engineering, which couldn't be, I mean, in my mind, couldn't be further from art. Tell me about that. Like, what led you into a mechanical engineering degree?
Well, in high school, I was really, like, I feel like I was really strong in art, and I was really strong in like science and physics. Like once I think it was just, I had a great physics teacher, and yeah, so she really just helped me find a love for it. And so when I was going to college, I was looking at, like, what do I want to study? And my idea of college at the time was, it was a place that you went to learn how to get a job. And so I didn't think art was a job, and I didn't even really know that there was art schools. So engineering seemed like the practical application, like the job form of physics to me. So I went in that way, and I was pretty naive. I just, was kind of following like the path, whatever that was, and not really like questioning like where I was going at the time. So,
Sure.
But yeah, I loved it. I feel like, when I think back on it, in the Renaissance and stuff, like artists and engineers and scientists were all the same person. There's a lot of intersection there. So I'm like, I don't know, it kind of makes sense to me, like when I look back.
No, I mean, that's true. And I find it interesting that today they are so seemingly divided, where you have, people will say I'm left-brained or I'm right-brained, but really back in the day, they were all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
all at the same time. So it's sort of interesting how we divide those along these weird lines. So you went to school in California. So you went to University of Pacific in Stockton. Why did you go there? Like, what led you to that school?
Pretty much like my criteria for going to school was that they had a good engineering program, and that they had water polo, preferably Div 1 water polo. And then so that was sort of like the best intersection of those criteria and financial aid. Like they drew me there. Plus, like, I was sort of tricked because the name made me think that it was closer to the ocean than it actually was. And like, being from Hawaii, my scale is a lot smaller than California. So looking at the map, I was like, oh, it's pretty close to the beach. And like, they're giving me this money, and then, it checks all the boxes.
So how did your water polo career go?
That was pretty short-lived. I was definitely like a big fish in a small pond in Hawaii. And when I got to the big leagues, I walked on to the team and I played a year and some change. But it was just, I knew I wasn't going to get to the level on the team that I wanted to. And like my grades were like suffering pretty hard. Like I realized I didn't really know how to study until I got to college. So,
Oh, okay.
so yeah, it was the right decision, but yeah, it was definitely like a big life change for me at the time.
And was that was that when you first moved to California from Hawaii? Was to go to school?
Yeah. Yep. Straight from high school.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like several episodes ago, I was talking to Jasper Wong, who's also grew up in Hawaii, and he was talking about one of the things that he experienced, at least in the area where he was in, was how Hawaii, and I'm almost kind of hearing it from you as well, how Hawaii didn't really, I guess, do a great job of cultivating artists. Preparing people to become artists and treating art as a career. And I've heard you, I just heard you say, I didn't really think art could even be a career. Do you feel that experience was sort of the same for you and that may have contributed to why you didn't think to pursue an art career at first?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it's changed now, especially with what he's doing, and, bringing culture into everyone's view. But yeah, I mean, like curriculum, art always just sort of was an alternative that you could choose in school. I don't know. Yeah, I think that there's limited access to the greater, like the larger art world. That's kind of true with like a lot of things. It's a small island and, so there's a lot of like things that feel peripheral that like when you're in the mainland are like pretty more front and center.
And while you were there at the university, were you taking any art classes at all? Like just even as electives?
Yeah. So I, in my senior year, I decided that engineering wasn't my path because it was actually fortunate because my program was that you had to do a full year kind of broken up into semesters of just going out and working. They called it like a co-op. So it was just like you went, spent your spring semester full-time interning at somewhere, but it was a paid internship. And, so you got a taste of what industry was like. And so I had enough of those where I was just like, oh, okay, like I can't start my life off like that. So,
and it was in the senior year. It was in the senior year that you figured that out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was something I was thinking about, for a while. And like, it was just like, okay, like I'm at the finish line and I'm not, I haven't done what I want to do. So, so I opened the minor and just like loaded my schedule with art stuff. So I got some art history. I got kind of like a basic, just like art class. I think I took a drawing class before that. I took a painting class and yeah, so I got like a really quick taste of of arts education.
So after graduating, kind of having recognized that, hey, maybe this may not be the right path, like what kind of work did you do? Did you go into mechanical engineering at first?
I tried. I graduated in 2008, and so it was like really there was nothing to get. Because I was sort of like, let me just like get an engineering job and like make some money, and then I can like figure out this art thing. But yeah, no one was calling me back, so I got into restaurant work. I was also like very passionate about like food and cooking and farming and stuff, and so the intention was to like find my way into a kitchen. Even being a prep cook would have been like great for me. I love that, but the only position was serving. And then once I like started making like, server money, I was like, there's no way I'm going into the kitchen anymore. So yeah, I did that for a while, which was great. It was like the right amount of like, you're able to make enough money in fewer hours, to just like keep going. So yeah, I did that while I sort of just painted for myself and I don't know, just like did my 20s, early 20s.
Were you in San Francisco at that point?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you like living in the Bay Area?
I loved it. I like lucked out. My first place there was in this big Victorian with like 9 roommates, and it was just like this sort of like piece of the old San Francisco that I think was was slowly disappearing. Not at that time, but like even, then it was sort of rare to stumble upon a community like that. But yeah, and then I mean, gentrification happened and now it's like a totally different place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved it. I have like some of my best memories and closest friends were made there.
So while you were doing the restaurant work, was that the point where you were really learning your craft? I mean, because you didn't really have a formal art education. You did have, like you said, you had some classes there at the end that you kind of took right at the tail end of your college. But how did you ultimately go about learning your painting craft?
I think just doing it. I always had a painting going. Before it was really just like trying to learn the tools, trying to learn what tools I liked working with, which, isn't like a cheap endeavor. So, I think just doing it and like kind of like looking around on the internet and going to shows and stuff and kind of like seeing what people were doing or trying to figure out like how they were doing it. And yeah, just like playing. Like I feel like I was intentional about like not, and I was lucky because that was kind of before social media was like such a thing. But I took my time like sharing it with anybody, like because I knew that I was still learning it and it wasn't to the point where I was happy with it. So just painted a lot.
Are there aspects of what you would perceive a formal art education to be that you feel like you missed out on and maybe that you wish you had more of?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. And like, I think like the critique aspect of art school, I think is cool because I always stumble on like how I talk about art and, I just like haven't practiced like explaining like why I do things or like if, like, or just hearing other people's interpretation, like, Instagram and shows are cool, but like most times they're just saying that they like it, they're not, there's not really like solid feedback on things that need improvement. I think, it's not the context. So I would have liked to do that, I think. And I don't know. Yeah, there's times where I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out how to do something. And I'm like, I'm sure someone could teach me how to do this, but like, I'm just like figuring it out, like I'm just seeing how it works and then adjusting.
For sure, yeah. And I found your trajectory interesting, not only for the fact that you went sort of from mechanical engineering to painting, but you also spent several years as a concert photographer in like the Bay Area, which I didn't even realize until I found some of your photography on the Bay Bridged Archives, which is a site that apparently exists in San Francisco. How did you first get started with concert photography?
It was probably, it was my wife. She's my girlfriend at the time, but she works in the music industry, and I think it was just, I think the Bay Bridge shared offices with Noise Pop, which is like kind of a, long-standing San Francisco festival / like music creator. And I think the Bay Bridge was looking for a photographer, and I liked photography. I had gear. So yeah, it just sort of, happened that way, but I loved it. Like it's, I always love live music and music in general. So it was kind of, and I was always that kid that had a camera at shows. So yeah, it kind of made sense, I guess.
What was this all freelance work, or were you on staff at some point?
It was freelance. It was like pretty much, very low pay, and it was more just for the activity of it and the experience and access, I guess, too. I did like in San Francisco, I was doing that, and I was doing ceramics, and I think I just like was enjoying like a very comfortable, like, like I have this part-time job that pays full-time, and I don't know, like there's all of these different creative outlets to explore. So yeah, I was kind of doing a lot then.
Do you feel like there are similarities in, photography and painting in that, do you feel that the strengths that you have and bring to the table as a photographer might also benefit you as a painter?
I think so. I think I just realized recently that like my understanding of light maybe comes from photography and sort of like, my eye for shadows maybe and how they fall could be. I mean, it also is just like especially with live music, the stage lights, there's, it's like a constant, a permanent thing, but like they play with it so much that, it's sort of, inspiring. But yeah, compositionally, I don't know. I wish that I could see more of a through line from photography to my paintings, but I realize I just tend to like put things in the middle and then like fill the space around it.
Do you still practice photography today? Like, do you still take your camera out?
Not much. It's more like when I'm in nature. I love to capture whatever moments I can.
Okay, so you're definitely looking more and more like this legit Renaissance man, just the more that we talk. And so I'd like to kind of shift into how you started to really get your work, noticed by galleries and start shifting into your full-time gallery work. How did that transition take place?
It was a little slow at first. I guess most people, that's the case. I just sort of got lucky when in San Francisco, I went to a show at 111 Minna, and Irene Fakes Hernandez, I think is her full name. She had a gallery called Wonderland SF, but she was also a curator at 111 Minna. And I went to that show and I was just blown away by the work, but also by the curation and how it was hung. And like, it was weird. I really felt like the muse or serendipity was like pushing me because it's not something that I would normally do, but I sort of sought her out to just compliment her on the show. So I sort of accidentally met her and showed her my work, and she was like, "This is amazing, call me tomorrow, don't text me, call me." And so I did, and she was like, "I have this group show, it's in 2 weeks, but if you want to make something, I'll put it up."
Oh, wow.
And it was a size show. I guess it was, everything had to be 16 by 16. Other than that, it was whatever. So yeah, I hustled and I did it. And at that point I had never even painted I guess the theme was Wonderland, whatever that meant to you. And I never had painted to a theme prompt. It was always just whatever I was thinking about painting. So it was the first and only painting I've ever delivered wet. But I did it, and I don't know, she invited me back to do more, and so she really gave me my start.
Were you pretty active? I mean, it sounds like you were pretty active in the gallery scene just there in San Francisco. Were you going out to gallery openings quite a bit?
Not as much as I should have. There was now that I realize how much community plays a part, I wish that I had gone out more, but I would see shows that I was really interested in, or that, would kind of gain bigger coverage, I guess, or hit the blogs, But yeah, I think I also just wasn't comfortable with calling myself an artist yet. So going to meet people and I would always be I make art, but I would never call myself an artist. So yeah, I think I just also that and being shy at the time.
And so at some point you ended up moving south to LA where you live today. What prompted that move? What motivated that?
I think it was just a combination of things. The predominant force was my wife lost her job in the Bay Area, and the move that she wanted to go into was more towards film and TV, music with film and TV. And so LA sort of seemed the obvious choice. There's not many of those jobs in the Bay Area anyway. I think we also were looking at LA for a while because San Francisco had changed so much, and like it was getting like hard to like just like afford to live there. Like I really towards the end wasn't going out very much because I just couldn't afford to like spend so much money on like a beer. And and so yeah, it's sort of like we used that, like her getting laid off as like a reason to like look this way. And I'm so happy we did. Like it really there's a lot of opportunity down here. And I think that's really what sparked things, was like I moved to LA and, you know, it was like, okay, now I'm moving with intention. Like I like starting over, building from scratch. So like, let's just work on the priorities. And so I put everything, I stopped, you know, doing photography, and I didn't find a ceramic studio. And I was just like, I'm just gonna do painting. And yeah, just like hit up every gallery that I wanted to be in. And yeah, got really lucky, and most of them like called me back. So
well, it's really cool how that kind of served as a catalyst for you to reorganize sort of your priorities and really zero in on exactly what you wanted to focus on. That's really cool.
Yeah, I really think like there's something good about being comfortable, but like if you have more ambitions, like it's kind of a bad, you know, being comfortable is a bad thing, or can be.
So have you been a lot more active in LA with the art community than you were in San Francisco?
Yeah, totally. I just like forced myself to go to shows, and like I like made like a ton of business cards, like way more than I'll ever need in my life. But I think I did that also because I was like, okay, I have to give them out. Like I didn't just make them for them to sit in my pocket, you know? So yeah, I definitely took networking less as a chore or like an obligation, and more as like a fun thing. And like, I think what was amazing moving to LA is just like realizing how much great art is here. Like I would find out about an amazing show that like I didn't even know was happening the night of, you know, and be able to like go there and like get up close to it, and, you know, and then go to another gallery. So yeah, I loved it here. I still do, but I'm so bummed that the pandemic has taken that away from all of us. It's such a bummer.
Yeah, no doubt. And with such a active art scene, I imagine it's felt there even more than, you know, most other areas. So let's talk about your art for a bit. You know, and some of the themes that you work in. You have this very interesting mix of sort of nature-focused art plus surrealism, which I find very interesting. You know, and a big focus of your work seems to be birds, you know, specifically. How did you first take an interest in birds, and like what led you to have that, you know, such a central focus to your work?
Honestly, it was just like this one for Christmas one year. My wife got me a book of bird photography, like birds in flight. I think I must have expressed an interest in birds just as a thing before then. But yeah, it was like I had like 2 weeks off from work or something, and I was planning to just do a bunch of paintings, and she got me this bird book, and I was just like, you know, this is amazing. So I just started painting them, and then I realized, you know, like getting in close and seeing their patterns and their colors and how beautiful they look in the air. I was just like, wow, I could do this for a while. There's just such endless diversity that, yeah, I just like, once I started, I was hooked. I just love how like something like their wings are so delicate, but like have so much power. Just that juxtaposition was like really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's very cool. But it's not all birds. You do, you know, bring in other forms of wildlife. Is that something that you know, trying to do more of, sort of get a more broad representation of the natural world?
Yeah, I think like it kind of just depends on like what theme or idea I'm trying to explore. But yeah, sometimes birds just don't fit everything. Also, I think like some birds are harder to, like, naturally we like anthropomorphize and sort of see ourselves in animals, and so I like to use that as a tool too. And sometimes I'm just like, I don't really see a bird representing that aspect of us or whatever.
One thematic that I really enjoy that you weave into your work quite a bit is this blending of flora and fauna, which I've heard you refer to as flana.
Yeah,
Before.
I'm trying to coin that term.
I mean, some examples are like armistice, scion, equinox are some notable examples. It's essentially these kind of plant-animal hybrids. Where does that hybridization come from? And like, what are you trying to, I guess, present with that?
The idea came from just sort of like seeing nature mimic itself. One that I really like that isn't really like with animals, but is like how like root systems look like veins and they look like lightning bolts. And, there are these like patterns that nature makes just because it's earth. And so I started seeing that across, animals and plants, like how a feather will look like a petal or a leaf, or it's sort of my way of like reminding myself and everybody that like everything's connected. The interconnection is there if you're looking for it. And I think it's sort of like its own metaphor.
Well, it's sort of interesting how these things that are completely, kind of grown and evolved in isolation, they evolved in very similar ways, almost like. But it sort of makes sense just from a scientist's perspective. Like if that works in one environment, it's very possible it could work in another environment, right? So if the spot on a wing is supposed to represent an eyeball, well, the spot on a fish may also mean to represent an eyeball, right? So it's almost like nature rhymes in these sort of interesting ways.
Yeah.
Another common theme, in sort of interconnected with that theme of nature interconnectedness. I've said that word too many times.
I know, it's so long.
Is the theme of symbiosis, which you've also kind of weave in and out, both mutualistic and parasitic symbiosis. I've heard you talk about that before. What is your interest in symbiosis, and how has that played into the messages that you're trying to communicate?
I think it's like the same thing, like interconnectedness. Everything fits so perfectly together on this planet. And so I just think I think about symbiosis a lot because we are so parasitic.
Yeah.
We really just like, we're the puzzle piece that refuses to fit in. And so I think, I just like to think more about how things work together and how there's balance and how I wish that we would do better, play a better role in that, and like be a bit more mutualistic in our coexistence. But I think, and even with each other, like I think symbiosis is just another word of cooperation or, helping each other out. So
yeah,
I think like humans can do that better towards each other as well.
No, for sure. And considering how big of a focus nature is, I have to imagine, you have some pretty strong feelings about things like climate change and, just environmental conservation. Have you found like that kind of subject matter bleed into your work at all? And, I guess provide commentary through your work in a way?
Yeah, totally. I think it's always there, or usually it's there. It pretty much drives, what I'm doing, maybe not specifically, but like my passion for protecting nature, whether it's with climate change or endangered species or, what have you. But for a while, I really was considering like quitting painting or just like quitting money, anything, or just trying to dedicate my life towards towards aiding solutions with climate change, because it's hard to like accept how immediately, right now is the time, like this is the last window that we've like procrastinated to. And when I think of it in that scale, I'm like, why am I painting? Like, why am I sitting here painting when I should just be, using my body and time to help whatever is making bigger impacts on solving this, because it's now or never.
Well, and you are an engineer, so you have that physics, you could figure some cool stuff out.
Yeah, there's actually like a lot of guilt that I carry from when I made that decision, because my focus in engineering was clean energy or energy efficiency. And, I felt really bad that like I had the training and could make a bigger impact. I definitely am okay with it now, because I'm like, I tried really hard. Like no one was, I needed to eat.
Right.
But yeah, so that's true. There's more that we can all do, I think.
Are you generally hopeful? And like, especially with regards to like climate change, and do you like your work to be hopeful?
Yeah, well, I think I try to find aspiration through my work, because the question of am I hopeful sort of changes day to day. There are times when like I'm optimistic, but most times I'm realistic, and that doesn't really give me hope. I sort of confronted that in some of my shows this year. I was painting about the post-Anthropocene, and that's sort of like accepting that like we're going to trash this place until we can't live here anymore. But like nature will continue, and thrive actually, because we'll make such a big hole. We'll like have gotten rid of so many species, and so many, so many lands will have to rejuvenate, that like the spark of evolution and the new adaptation, I'm sure, is going to be really beautiful. But like, bummer that we won't be around to see it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's interesting how, because your work is very bright, it's very colorful, and it's almost kind of evoking joy, but the thought of, hey, this is actually life after humans.
Yeah, I know. I always want to make something that people want to look at. Like sometimes I paint a little darker, and that's fine. But like for the most part, especially with gallery work, or like, just knowing that someone's going to buy this, like I'd rather paint messages that are aspirational and like encourage people to find the beauty and to have appreciation for nature, rather than like scolding them of like, like, here's a dead polar bear, look at it.
No, I think that's interesting. And I think that works in a lot of ways, because I think, depending on who you're talking to, people can become resentful if you scold them too much,
Yeah, they might even do it intentionally, like just to spite you. So yeah.
A majority of the work that you make is oil on wood. What is it about oil specifically that you like so much, opposed to like acrylic or gouache?
No, I definitely appreciate the time that I have to work with it, especially now. Like I've kind of I've changed up my medium. I used to use, what is it called? Liquin a lot. And that sort of has like dryers. It helps speed up the drying, but more recently I've been painting just with oil as a medium, and have been enjoying the amount of time that I have to work with it. And I think just the colors, like even just mixing, the time it takes to mix colors, like, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I'm still mixing my colors for the day. But like, I think if it was acrylic or gouache, like it would be dry already. Like, so yeah, because I don't really optically mix or like layer colors to create another color. I don't know what the terms are, but like I pretty much like paint the color that I need, or mix the color that I need.
So it's really just the slow drying aspect that you like more than anything else?
Yeah, I don't think I've given the other mediums enough time, and like honestly, I'm still learning oils. So like I think maybe in a while I'll like give acrylics but probably not. Because then I'm like, well, I figured oils out. Like I don't know.
That makes sense. And I believe I've even seen some pieces on aluminum. There was, I think, one at least in a recent show at Bainart. Like, how have you liked working with aluminum?
It's okay. I think it definitely it was kind of, yeah, I was just trying the medium out. I like how lightweight and strong it is. Like especially with like shipping so far, that was sort of like a consideration. But I think I don't know quite how to prime it myself or like kind of like build up the surface on aluminum. And yeah, I'm like, but I could see myself taking the time to figure that out too, because it's a cool substrate.
What goes into your decision about like which substrates you're going to work on for a particular piece? Like, was that just purely because I want an excuse to try aluminum, or did you have a particular reason?
No, yeah, pretty much that. I had seen it, and like I've seen artists like use the actual material, like the kind of shininess of it, through their work, and I think that would be a cool application. But pretty much it was just like I wanted to give it a try and see if it was something I wanted to stick with.
Cool. And when you're working on a piece, either just a single piece or for a larger body of work, like what goes into the ideation stage? Like do you keep sketchbooks around that sort of spark ideas? Do you do word lists like Cooper was talking about? Like how do you typically arrive at an idea for a piece?
Usually it's the theme that sparks it, and for like a bigger show, that's such a longer process. But yeah, I don't keep a sketchbook. I use like loose paper now, because it was getting so hard to like find like a sketch, or an idea. But yeah, I sketch a lot. If there's an idea that just pops into my head, I'll like sketch it with some notes to sort of like revisit later. But yeah, I mean, I think it comes from thinking about a theme and then thinking about how I can visually represent that. But also sometimes it's just looking at a bird or a flower or a leaf or something and being like, oh, that reminds me of this thing. And, it's sort of leading like, could that work? And just sort of building it off from there. And yeah.
So you mentioned that sometimes it's a little bit longer of a process if it's a large body of work, like a larger show. So how does that differ? Do you arrive at the theme first and then sort of work within those constraints, or do the individual pieces sort of develop the theme organically?
I've been doing it with the theme first. I don't know if I really like that. But that's sort of, I'm just kind of new at getting into bigger shows and these mini solos and solos. So I'm still learning my process, but yeah, I have been sort of trying to establish a theme, like, post-Anthropocene and what that means. Or my most recent one is sort of the driving idea was like trying to create the divine in nature, like sort of trying to think about how indigenous people viewed nature. And I sort of came to the conclusion that a lot of them saw nature as God, and then going from there. But yeah, I sort of find that it's sometimes hindering more than helping to like feel obligated to stick with the theme, because I said that was the theme instead of just letting pieces come to me and then, sort of reassessing what they all mean at the end.
Do you think that's something that's going to evolve, like as you get more comfortable with larger shows?
Yeah, I think so, because it hasn't been super smooth any of the times. And maybe it just is, it's like a hard thing to do. Like it is a different beast, I think, thinking about a set of paintings than like one, and like feeling this weird obligation to make things sort of gel together. I don't know, maybe that's just pressure that I put on myself, but it's a weird variable to navigate around.
So once you have like a solid idea figured out for a piece, like what's the next step for you? Are you sketching out compositions at that point, or do you kind of just jump right into painting?
Yeah, I think it's hard because I have to like establish the sizes, like what rectangle I'm going to put it in. So usually I'll do a lot of sketches just to, I use so much reference photos too in my work that like it's very necessary to like make sure that I have, enough references to like make the posture, like get like the expression, the lighting and all the other elements. And yeah, that's something that I've sort of learned relatively recently. I used to just work everything out on the board. You know, I was just like, why am I going to waste my time sketching things like when I could just do it here? And then, you know, like erasing is much faster than repainting. So, and I've done enough paintings where I'm like, I need to fix that because it needs to be fixed. And, you know, so I'd rather figure that out earlier.
So how detailed do you usually go with your sketches? Like, have you gotten to the point where you're figuring everything out in the sketch, or is it a little bit rougher and you sort of organically discover stuff as you paint?
Yeah, it's a little more organic. It's pretty rough. It's more just like, how much space is this thing taking up, and like, you know, where is it? But yeah, I like to leave room open because I think like the sketch never looks like what I paint. Like it just, however I translate it onto the, I don't like, you know, trace it on there. So however I put it on there, then I have to sort of build around what I've already done.
Okay. And you know, with the work being oil and it being as slow drying, like we were talking about, do you work on multiple pieces at once, or do you tend to focus on just one, see it all the way through, and then dive into the next?
Yeah, I think like if I have enough ideas to have multiple ones going on, I will. Sometimes I'm just like chasing down deadlines that like I don't have the next one figured out yet. And so I'm sort of just like trying to finish this one painting and then, you know, work on it one by one. But I like both. It's nice to like, if I'm tired of painting fur, like go paint a feather. Yeah, sometimes it gets a little tedious.
Okay, right on. And you know, before we dive into what you have coming up, you know, let's chat a little bit about that show at Bain Art. You know, that was your debut Australian solo exhibition, from what I understand. You know, and the title was Phase. So, tell me a little bit about that body of work and how did you get connected with Jon?
Well, Jon, he reached out to me. I mean, we had only done one show before this opportunity came about. But yeah, he just reached out to me and invited me to his small work show, which I think is kind of his way of introducing new artists to the roster, trying them out. And then, yeah, the show was weird because I kind of had more pieces planned because I was following the post-Anthropocene idea and continuing to explore that, but kind of more with the frame of rising water. But then, yeah, the pandemic happened and I couldn't think about anything other than that. And so I'd be like trying to sketch out the next piece that I had in mind, and like just like, you know, it was sort of like reading a book and you're like rereading the same line.
I do that.
You know, you're like
you're just distracted, right?
Yeah, completely. It's amazing that our brains can be somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's not fight it. Let's like, you know, feel the things and see what comes out. So it's sort of half post-Anthropocene and half sort of a reaction to the pandemic and Black Lives Matter. But then I realized afterwards that it's just sort of about adaptation to a new normal, a new order. And I think that's what we've all been doing is trying to just adapt as things change. So that's kind of why I call it phase, because it's just like this transitionary time.
Was that the entire body of work created during the pandemic, or was it started earlier than that?
It pretty much started, well, I think I started maybe just a few weeks, I think, before. Yeah, probably. I think my goal was to have one painting before I had planned to go to Argentina, which like is the week that like the borders got shut down, which I'm glad that it got shut down before, because I had friends that went before and then they were like stuck in Argentina.
Oh,
so,
man.
Yeah. So that was like, yeah, from February to July, I think.
So, just a handful of months after this last show, you actually have a brand new solo show coming up next month, January 16th at Haven Gallery. So it's also alongside friend and former guest Brian Mashburn, which is awesome. What can you share about this new series of works?
I'm really excited about it. I'm really stoked to show in Haven's new space. Congrats. This show was sort of I sort of briefly mentioned it, but inspired by the idea that God is nature. Sort of like the question that I posed to myself before every piece was like, how do I get people to worship nature? So I don't know if I like nailed it. I think it's definitely been a journey in exploring that theme, but yeah, there's a lot of flana, a lot more flana coming your way. And the palette is interesting. Like I'm never really intentional about a cohesive palette in a solo or a bigger series, but this one sort of just came out to be nicely cohesive. So yeah, clock that, I guess.
Does the show have a title yet?
No, it doesn't. I'm just like trying to finish the paintings, and then I'm gonna do all the thinking and word stuff after.
Right on. How many pieces will there be?
I've got 8.
Okay, very cool. Do you know if the gallery will be doing any kind of in-person, like scheduled visits, or is it going to be entirely virtual?
No, I think that there's in-person. I don't know if they're going to have a gathering, a reception that might be off the table. I'm not planning to be in New York, but as of now, it's open to the public, and I don't think that appointments are necessary yet. So
okay.
We'll see. A lot can change in a month and a half. So
no doubt.
Fingers crossed, because Melbourne got locked down like the week of my show in Australia at Bain Arts. So that was a bummer to have the expectation of people seeing it and then it not. But yeah, I'm not really expecting anyone to see this show in person, I guess. It's just weird.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. I mean, what are your feelings on like virtual openings in general?
I'm glad that there's something, and I commend the galleries for doing what they can and like trying to adjust, and it's been nice. I think it got a little saturated because usually you would just go to one show, but now like every gallery in the world is having a virtual opening to attend, and we're invited. So. But yeah, I think it's a bummer that we can't go and see it. It's weird making a show knowing that like no one's going to see it in person, or that very, very few people will. And so, I don't know. Yeah, that comes with its own weirdness.
Right on. And so with that show sort of, on the verge of debuting and, the work's mostly, close to being complete, what do you have coming up next? Like, what does 2021 look like for you?
Well, I'm giving myself a little break. I tell myself that, but I don't think it's actually going to turn out that way. I've got some commissions to attend to, at the beginning of the year, which I've carved some time out for. And then I have another show at Corey Helford Gallery in August, and that'll be a 2-person show. So I'll probably start working on that shortly after the winter's done.
Very cool. Is that going to be a bigger show than the one that you had with them at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. So the last one was a 3-person show. This one's 2-person. And yeah, I'm really excited. It's with Nunzio Pacci, I think is his name.
Oh, nice.
Italian artist. I really like his work, and I think it's going to be a cool show, together with him.
Awesome. Any upcoming like print releases that you'd want to put on people's radar?
I wish. I have calendars for sale right now. I don't know when this comes out, but I still have them now. And yeah, once I'm done making this Haven show and have it all shipped off, I'll start thinking about prints. But Yeah, I definitely want to. I did a studio sale this fall, and that went super well. And
Nice.
I'm inspired to do it again. So I'm hoping to make some new small works and have a print release and stuff in the spring. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Very cool. So where can people find you online so they can stay plugged into all this?
Pretty much Jon Ching Art, JonChing art is what you need to Google to find me on Instagram or Facebook, or put a .com and that's my website.
Very cool. So last question, and this is something that I'd like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
I would love you to, can I give you two?
Sure. I mean, I've had people give me a whole list of them. So
I would love to hear you talk to Hanayata. She's like the queen of my genre, I feel like. And then Lauren Brevner. I really love her work, and I love how she plays with different materials and always seems to be like trying something new, but also like really staying true to like her heritage and representing like her blood. I love it.
Awesome. Well, two great choices. And Jon, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I was stoked to chat with you.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jon. I really like what Jon had to say about the way he communicates through his work, encouraging the viewers to be a part of solving these problems rather than beating them over the head with, more of an accusatory tone. I guess carrot instead of the stick, you could say. It's definitely something we need to get in front of, like yesterday, if there's any hope for the future. So I love how he's able to harness that passion he has for this cause and, share it with others through his art. And I'm eager to see what he puts together for this new solo show he has coming up in January. The, yet to be titled show will open on January 16th at Haven Gallery. And it looks like the 8 new pieces will focus on effectively, deifying nature and, presenting it as something worth worshiping. Follow Jon's and the gallery's Instagram for more details as they become available. So thanks again to Jon for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. One big way you could help out if you're enjoying the show would be to review it on Apple Podcasts. And of course, just sharing it with your friends. As always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairespodcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairespodcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.